The encrypted message arrived at exactly midnight, cutting through the silence of Cassandra Vale's penthouse office like a blade through silk. The golden glow of Seattle's skyline painted her profile as she stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection ghost-like against the urban constellation below. At 32, she commanded the legal department of Nexus Corporation with an iron will that had earned her both respect and fear throughout the tech world. The familiar encryption signature made her heart stumble against her ribs. Only one person had ever used that particular code, a man who had vanished from her life 2 years ago without explanation, leaving behind nothing but questions and the wreckage of her heart. Julian. Her trembling fingers decoded the message. Pier 19, come alone. Your life depends on it. Ghost, ghost. The codename he'd used during their clandestine affair, when stolen moments between his mysterious consulting work and her rising legal career had felt like the most important thing in the universe. Before he'd disappeared like morning mist, leaving her to wonder if their love had been nothing but an elaborate lie, the rational part of her mind, the part that had built empires and toppled corporate dynasties, screamed that this was a trap. But the woman who had spent 2 years trying to forget the taste of his kiss and the way he'd whispered her name in the darkness was already reaching for her coat. 20 minutes later, Cassandra's heels clicked against wet concrete as she made her way through the industrial maze of the waterfront. The October air bit through her designer jacket, carrying the scent of salt and diesel fuel. Fog rolled off Elliott Bay like the breath of sleeping giants, swallowing the city lights in gray velvet. She found him at the end of Pier 19, a shadow among shadows. Julian Cross stood with his back to her, his dark hair longer now, touching, the collar of a weathered leather jacket she'd never seen before. When he turned, the pale wash of a distant streetlight caught his face, and Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. He was thinner than she remembered, all sharp edges and hollow spaces. A scar traced a silver line from his left temple to his. Jaw and his green eyes, once bright with laughter and mischief, looked haunted by ghosts she couldn't name. Whatever he'd been doing these past 2 years had marked him in ways that made her chest ache. "You came," he said, his voice carrying the same rough warmth that had once undone her completely. Now it felt like fingers probing an old wound. "Don't read anything into it," Cassandra replied, stopping 10 feet away, close enough to hear him, far enough to run. "You have 5 minutes. Julian's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. Still sharp as a razor. "I missed that about you." 4.5 minutes. He reached into his jacket and Cassandra tensed, her hand moving instinctively toward the pepper spray in her purse, but he only pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents and photographs. "Nexus isn't what you think it is, Cass. Victor. Blackwood isn't the visionary genius the world believes him to be. He's something much darker. Victor, her mentor, her boss, the man who had taken her from a small-town public defender to the chief legal counsel of one of the world's most powerful corporations, the man who had held her when she'd cried over Julian's betrayal. "You're lying," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I wish I was." Julian opened the envelope, revealing photographs that made her blood turn to ice water. "Nexus has been conducting illegal human experiments, Cass. Genetic manipulation using technology that shouldn't exist. And when Dr. Marcus Torres tried to expose it, Victor had him killed. The photos showed laboratory facilities she'd never seen, despite having access to every floor of the Nexus building. Test subjects strapped to tables, their faces twisted. In agony, documents bearing Victor's signature authorizing procedures that violated every law of medical ethics. "This doesn't prove anything," Cassandra said, but her legal mind was already cataloging evidence, and what she saw terrified her. "These could be fabricated." "Could be, but they're not." Julian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Different now, sharper. more dangerous. Marcus Torres contacted me 3 months ago. He was scared, Cass. Said Victor was planning something that would change the course of human evolution itself. 2 days later, he was dead. Convenient car accident on Highway 99. Cassandra's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. Why should I believe you? You're a liar, Julian. You're good at it. His green eyes met hers, and she saw something there that made her heart stutter. Not just pain, but a desperate kind of truth that she'd learned to recognize in witnesses who were fighting for their lives. Because you know I never lied about loving you, he said quietly, and because Victor suspects you know too much. You're in danger, Cass. More danger than you can imagine. The fog rolled between them, thick and cold. In the distance, a ship's horn echoed across the water like a funeral dirge. Cassandra stared at the man who had destroyed her once and was now asking her to risk everything she'd built from the ashes of that destruction. 1 hour, she heard herself say. I'll give you 1 hour to convince me you're telling the truth. Julian's exhale was visible in the cold air. Thank you. But as they walked toward his car, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows or the red dot of a sniper's sight painting Julian's back like a target. The abandoned Palomar Observatory sat like a broken crown atop the hills outside Seattle, its dome fractured against the star-scattered sky. Cassandra followed Julian through rusted gates and overgrown pathways, her heart hammering with each step deeper into isolation. The place felt haunted by dreams of distant worlds, fitting, considering what Julian was about to reveal. Talk, she demanded, as they entered the main building. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space where telescopes once reached for infinity. Julian activated a small device that bathed the room in blue light. Signal scrambler. We have maybe 20 minutes before they triangulate our position. He spread photographs across a dusty table like tarot cards predicting doom. What I'm about to show you will change everything you believe about reality itself. The first photo showed what appeared to be a crash site, twisted metal that didn't look quite terrestrial, scattered across a desert landscape. The second revealed the interior of a vessel with walls that seemed to pulse with organic life, but it was the third photograph that made Cassandra's knees weak. A humanoid figure lay on an examination table, its elongated limbs and oversized cranium unmistakably alien. Beside it stood Dr. Nora Quinn, Nexus's brilliant head of biotechnology, her face illuminated by the glow of instruments that belonged in science fiction. Roswell was child's play compared to what happened in Nevada 6 years ago, Julian said. A craft containing 3 beings crash-landed in the desert. The military recovered everything. The ship, the occupants, their technology. But instead of studying it in some underground bunker, they made a deal with private industry. Cassandra's legal mind grasped for rational explanations, even as the evidence stared back at her. You're telling me that aliens exist, and Victor somehow got his hands on their bodies? Not just their bodies, their genetic material, their technology. Dr. Quinn has been reverse engineering alien DNA, combining it with human subjects to create something new. Something that Victor believes will make Nexus the most powerful entity on Earth. Another photograph showed a laboratory, hidden deep beneath the Nexus building, levels that didn't appear on any blueprint Cassandra had ever seen. Glass chambers lined the walls like transparent tombs, each containing a figure suspended in luminescent fluid. Some appeared human, others were something else entirely. Marcus Torres was Dr. Quinn's research assistant, until his conscience got the better of him, Julian continued. He discovered that the test subjects weren't volunteers. They were kidnapped homeless people, runaways, people who wouldn't be missed. Victor was turning them into weapons. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Cassandra gripped the edge of the table as the implications crashed over her. How do you know all this? Who are you really, Julian? His green eyes met hers, and she saw 3 years of secrets swimming in their depths. My real name is Julian Cross, but I work for a classified government task force investigating extraterrestrial threats. I was assigned to infiltrate Nexus and gather intelligence on their activities. What I found was worse than anything we'd imagined. The confession hit her like a physical blow. So everything between us was a lie? Our entire relationship was just cover for your mission? Julian moved closer, his hand reaching toward her face before dropping to his side. It started that way. But what happened between us, Cass? That was the only real thing in my life. That's why I had to leave. When I realized how deep Victor's operation went, I knew that staying would put you in danger. Before Cassandra could respond, the blue light of Julian's scrambler flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, she heard the sound that would haunt her dreams. Footsteps, measured and deliberate, echoing through the observatory like a countdown to doom. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing despite appearing to be a woman in her 30s. Her hair was platinum blonde, her skin pale as moonlight, and her eyes were the color of liquid mercury. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed to defy physics, each step perfectly silent despite the concrete floor. "Agent Phoenix!" Julian breathed, his hand moving to a weapon Cassandra hadn't realized he was carrying. The woman, if that's what she was, tilted her head with curious precision. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that shouldn't have been possible for human vocal cords. "Julian Cross, the ghost who refuses to stay buried. Victor sends his regards." Phoenix raised her hand, and the air around it shimmered with energy that made Cassandra's teeth ache. The woman's fingers were long and elegant, but as Cassandra watched in horror, they began to extend, becoming razor-sharp claws that gleamed in the starlight. "Run!" Julian whispered, grabbing Cassandra's hand. "Whatever happens, don't look back." They sprinted through the observatory's corridors as the sound of pursuit echoed behind them. But Phoenix wasn't running. She was flowing, her movements too fast and too fluid for anything entirely human. The enhancements Dr. Quinn had given her were beyond anything Cassandra had imagined possible. They burst through an emergency exit into the night air, Julian's car waiting in the parking lot like salvation. As they drove away, Cassandra looked back to see Phoenix standing silhouetted in the observatory's doorway, her mercury eyes tracking their escape with predatory patience. "She let us go," Cassandra realized, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "No, she's hunting us. The real game is just beginning." Part 3. The Hunter Becomes Hunted. The abandoned subway tunnel beneath Pioneer Square reeked of rust and forgotten dreams. Julian led Cassandra through the darkness, their footsteps echoing, off tiled walls that hadn't seen maintenance crews in decades. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, transforming their faces into masks of shadow and crimson. "There's a safe house down here," Julian explained, his voice tight with exhaustion. "Part of an old Cold War network. Phoenix won't be able to track us through the electromagnetic interference from the old electrical systems. They'd been running for 6 hours, switching cars twice and taking a labyrinthine route through the city's forgotten spaces. But Cassandra could feel their pursuer like a weight pressing against her consciousness. Agent Phoenix, moving through the urban landscape with inhuman persistence. The safe house was a converted maintenance room hidden behind a rusted door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Inside, Julian had stockpiled supplies, weapons, communication equipment, medical supplies, and enough food for a week. It felt like a tomb prepared for the living. "Tell me about her," Cassandra demanded as Julian checked his weapons with military precision. "Phoenix. What did they do to her?" Julian's hands stilled on the grip of his pistol. Her name was Rebecca Martinez, 23 years old, a graduate student in bioengineering who disappeared from her apartment 18 months ago. Dr. Quinn selected her because of her genetic compatibility with the alien DNA. The process, it destroyed everything she was and rebuilt her into something else. Cassandra sank onto a folding chair, the weight of revelation crushing down on her. Victor is creating an army of these things? Not an army. Something worse. Phoenix is a prototype, but she's not the endgame. Victor is planning to auction the enhancement process to world governments. Imagine every military, every intelligence agency, every terrorist organization having access to superhuman assassins. The magnitude of it staggered her. In the red-tinted darkness, Julian looked like a man carrying the weight of the world's sins. Cassandra found herself studying the lines of his face. The way stress had carved new valleys around his eyes, the scar that told stories he'd never shared. "Why did you really leave?" she asked quietly. "And don't give me the noble protector. Speech. Tell me the truth." Julian set down his weapon and turned to face her fully. In the dim light, his green eyes looked almost black. "Because I was falling apart, Cass. Because every night I spent with you, I was lying about who I was and what I was doing. Because I knew that eventually you'd discover the truth, and it would destroy us both. That was my choice to make." Was it? When the choice was between your safety and my happiness? The anger that had sustained her for 2 years crumbled like a dam breaking. Suddenly she was on her feet, crossing the small space between them, her hands fisting in his leather jacket. "You arrogant bastard! You don't get to make those decisions for me. You don't get to play God with my life." "Cass, shut up." She pulled him down to her, their mouths crashing together with 2 years of fury and longing and desperate need. He tasted like danger and regret and the ghost of every kiss they'd shared in stolen moments. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer as if he could merge their souls through sheer force of want. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together in the red-stained darkness. "I never stopped loving you," Julian whispered against her lips. "Not for a single day." "Then don't leave me again," Cassandra breathed. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Their lips met again, softer this time, a promise sealed in flesh and breath. Julian's hands traced the lines of her face like a blind man memorizing light, and Cassandra felt something broken inside her, beginning to heal. The moment shattered like glass when the lights went out. Dr. Nora Quinn's private laboratory existed in a space between worlds, part surgical theater, part alien cathedral. Bioluminescent panels pulsed along the walls like the breathing of some vast organism, casting everything in an otherworldly blue-green glow. Cassandra and Julian stood in the center of this technological shrine, surrounded by the evidence of Quinn's unholy work. "I've been waiting for you," Quinn said, emerging from the shadows like a ghost made flesh. At 45, she retained the sharp beauty that had made her famous in scientific circles, but her eyes held depths that spoke of knowledge no human was meant to possess. "Though I admit, I didn't expect you to arrive together." Julian kept his weapon trained on her, but Quinn seemed unconcerned. She moved to a control panel and began activating systems with the casual efficiency of someone preparing morning coffee. "You created Phoenix," Cassandra stated, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You turned Rebecca Martinez into a monster." "I gave Rebecca transcendence," Quinn corrected, her tone carrying the fervor of a true believer. "The alien genetic. Material doesn't just enhance physical capabilities, it rewrites the very structure of consciousness itself. Rebecca Martinez was limited by human biology, human psychology. Phoenix is evolution incarnate." Holographic displays materialized around them, showing DNA sequences that hurt to look at directly. The double helix was wrong somehow, twisted into configurations that shouldn't have been stable in normal space-time. "The beings who crashed in Nevada weren't explorers," Quinn continued. "They were refugees, fleeing something so terrible that they risked everything to reach our reality. They're..." Genetic code carries the memory of their fear, but also the potential for something magnificent. Julian's finger tightened on his trigger. Enough. Where's Victor? What's his end game? Quinn smiled, and the expression transformed her face into something alien and beautiful. Victor believes he's the architect of this operation. Poor fool. He sees only profit margins and political influence. He has no understanding of what we're truly unleashing. She gestured, and the laboratory's walls became transparent, revealing the city beyond. But the Seattle Cassandra knew was gone, replaced by something out of a fever dream. Buildings twisted into impossible spirals, the sky rippled like water, and figures moved through the streets with inhuman grace. "This is what's coming," Quinn whispered. Not Victor's vision of enhanced humans, but the birth of an entirely new form of consciousness. The alien DNA doesn't just change bodies, it opens doorways to realities that exist parallel to our own. Cassandra felt reality shifting around her like quicksand. "You're insane." "Am I? Or am I the only one with the courage to embrace what we're becoming?" Quinn touched another control, and the illusion vanished, returning them to the stark reality of the laboratory. "The process has already begun, my dear. Every employee of Nexus has been exposed to trace amounts of the genetic material through the building's air filtration system. Some are more compatible than others, but all of you are changing." The words hit Cassandra like ice water. "No, that's impossible." "Is it? Haven't you been having unusual dreams lately? Flashes of insight that seem to come from nowhere? Enhanced intuition that borders on precognition?" Quinn's smile widened as she saw the recognition in Cassandra's eyes. "You've been one of our most successful test subjects, though you never knew it." Julian spun toward Cassandra, his face pale with understanding. "The medical screening when you joined Nexus. They didn't just test your blood, they introduced the genetic markers. You've been transforming for 3 years. Before Cassandra could respond, the laboratory's security doors slammed shut with a finality that sounded like coffin lids closing. Emergency lighting bathed everything in blood-red illumination as Victor Blackwood's voice echoed from hidden speakers. "Dr. Quinn, I believe you've said enough." The CEO of Nexus Corporation materialized from a hidden elevator, flanked by security personnel wearing body armor that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. At 60, Victor remained imposing. Silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the presence of a man accustomed to bending the world to his will, but it was the woman beside him who made Julian curse under his breath. Commander Helena Stone stepped into the light wearing the uniform of military intelligence, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized the harsh planes of her face. Julian's former handler, the woman who had sent him into this nightmare, looked at him with the cold satisfaction of a chess master moving pieces into position. "Hello, Julian," Stone said. "It's time you learned the truth about your mission." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. "You knew. From the beginning, you knew what Nexus was doing." "I orchestrated it," Stone replied without emotion. "The crashed vessel, the genetic material, Victor's funding, all of it was designed to develop enhanced soldiers for the United States military. Did you really think an operation of this magnitude could exist without government oversight?" Victor's face darkened with understanding. "You used me, my resources, my company, my researchers, to serve a greater purpose," Stone cut him off. "National security trumps corporate profit, Victor, though I admit your auction scheme was an unexpected complication." Dr. Quinn laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "Fools, all of you. You think you're controlling forces beyond your comprehension, but you're merely catalysts in a transformation that was always inevitable. The alien DNA doesn't just enhance, it calls to its source. Every person you've exposed, every hybrid you've created is a beacon drawing something vast and terrible toward Earth." The laboratory shuddered as if struck by an earthquake. Through the transparent walls, Cassandra could see the night sky beginning to tear like fabric, revealing glimpses of impossible geometries beyond. Phoenix materialized in the center of the room without triggering any alarms, her mercury eyes reflecting the chaos around them. But she wasn't alone. Other figures emerged from the shadows, men and women whose faces carried the same inhuman beauty, the same predatory grace. "The first generation awakens," Phoenix announced, her voice harmonizing with frequencies that made reality shiver. "The doorway opens, and our true masters return home." As the walls between dimensions began to collapse, Cassandra realized with crystal clarity that none of them, not Victor, not Stone, not even Quinn, had any idea what they had truly unleashed upon the world. Part 5. The Final Gambit, the Nexus. Building's upper floors had become a war zone where physics went to die. Reality bled at the edges as dimensional rifts tore through the corporate headquarters, revealing glimpses of the alien realm beyond. Through the shattered windows of Victor's penthouse office, the Seattle skyline writhed like a living thing, buildings bending and flowing as the boundary between worlds collapsed. Cassandra pressed her back against an overturned conference table, her enhanced senses overwhelming her with information. She could hear Julian's heartbeat 3 rooms away, feel the electromagnetic signatures of the hybrid soldiers hunting them, taste the metallic tang of interdimensional energy in the air. The alien DNA in her system was fully awakening, rewriting. Her nervous system in real time. "Cass!" Julian's voice cut through the chaos as he dove behind cover beside her. "The building's core systems are failing. If we don't stop this cascade, the rifts will expand beyond the city." Across the room, Dr. Quinn stood at the center of a swirling vortex of energy, her arms raised like a conductor orchestrating reality's symphony. Her body flickered between human and something else, elongated limbs, luminescent skin, eyes that held the depth of alien stars. "The transformation cannot be stopped," she called out, her voice layered with harmonics that shouldn't have been possible. "Our benefactors are coming home and humanity will ascend to join them in paradise." Phoenix and her hybrid soldiers formed a protective circle around Quinn, their bodies shifting and flowing as they embraced their alien nature. But Cassandra could see something Quinn couldn't, the fear hidden behind Phoenix's mercury eyes, the way her enhanced consciousness recoiled from whatever was pressing against the dimensional barrier. Victor crouched behind his desk, his empire crumbling around him in the most literal sense. The corporate mogul who had once commanded global markets looked small and broken, muttering about stock prices and quarterly reports as his building dissolved into impossible geometry. Commander Stone lay motionless near the elevator, her neck twisted at an unnatural angle. She had tried to regain control of the situation right up until Phoenix had snapped her spine with casual efficiency. Even in death, her face wore an expression of calculating ambition. Through the dimensional rifts, shapes moved in the alien realm beyond, vast, predatory forms that regarded Earth with hunger that transcended mere appetite. Cassandra's enhanced perception let her glimpse their true nature, and what she saw filled her with existential terror. These weren't the refugees Quinn believed them to be. They were hunters, and humanity was their prey. "Julian," she whispered, grabbing his hand. "We have to destroy the genetic samples, all of them. It's the only way to close the rifts."